so much for joining us for our fifth installment of Wednesday in the Word. I hope that these have been helpful to you as we just try to get some midweek reports out and also to share a quick devotional word. First off this morning, we want to talk about the governor issued, a statement saying that he's going to start opening the state up a little bit more. We don't know what that looks like. We don't know how the churches are going to be impacted. I personally don't foresee us going from a strict stay-at-home to allowing us to be business as usual in May. We'll see what he recommends or allows. This is what I can promise. We're going to make our decisions based upon the safety and welfare of our people and our community. So be in prayer for us as we do that. I don't see us meeting in May, but that's just my thoughts right now as of April 22nd. It might be until June or July. We'll just kind of see how it goes. Political statements aside, it doesn't matter. Look, what matters is everybody feels safe and ready to come back when we are back. Okay, so that's where we are. We miss you. I know you miss us. I get great texts and emails every day, and so we look forward to seeing each other. Second announcement: this Friday night at 6:30, we're going to be doing a Facebook Live trivia. Basically, just get your family together. It's going to be a lot of Bible trivia, and we'll be doing it via Facebook Live, and so join us at 6:30. Just have something to write, pen and paper, something to write with, and we'll have a good time with that. We should be done by 7:15. Okay, so that's this Friday at 6:30. Okay, well this afternoon, I guess it is, I wanted to talk to you about a theory regarding Jesus Christ dying on the cross. I joined a lot of your Sunday school classes this past week, and you've been looking at the days after the crucifixion or the resurrection, and so I wanted to discuss a theory called the swoon theory. The swoon theory is that Jesus didn't die on the cross, but he simply passed out and was unconscious, and so he was just asleep, if you will, in the tomb. And so as we discuss this, I wanted to go through all that Jesus went through from being betrayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay, so first we realize that he was punched, he was kicked, he was pushed around going through the trials. He had that fake crown of thorns shoved upon his head, which put deep gashes and caused massive amounts of blood to go down his face. We remember that he was scourged. Remember the lashings of 39 times where he was beat. He was tied to a pole and he was beat with the cattails, and it would rip flesh and away from his body, and so he went through all of that. And again, the constant beatings and being pushed down, being hit in the face. It said at one point hair out of his beard was pulled out. So he went through all of this, and then after he went through all of that torture, then he had to carry his cross about a mile and a half down what's called the Via Dolorosa, and that cross is estimated to weigh around at least 100 pounds. All right? He had to carry that on the same back that he had just been whipped to the point of death. All right, so he went through all of that, and we know that he had help from a man named Simon. We don't know how far Simon helped him carry, but we know that Jesus did, in fact, carry that 100-pound cross at a certain point. Okay, and so Jesus went through all of that. And then we get to the point on Golgotha where they put nails into each of his wrists. A lot of our pictures, a lot of our understanding is that it went through his hands, but odds are it went through his wrist right there. It separated tendons that were running through there and connected to the shoulder. And so he went both hands, both wrists, and then they put his feet together and they put one nail through his feet. All right, so could you imagine the agony, the pain of experiencing that? The worst that many of us have ever experienced is maybe stepping on an old rusty nail, and we know how miserable that is for the week after, right? And so Jesus went through all of that, and then he hung on the cross for hours. And then, to make matters worse, they stabbed him in his side with the spear, right, at the very end. Now, let's talk about some things that maybe we don't really think about. The human body has about a gallon to a gallon and a half of blood inside, all right? I think it's about 5.5 liters. Think about all that blood that he shed for probably about 10 to 12 hours through all of those beatings, all right? I'm not saying that he ran out of blood by any means, but he lost a tremendous amount of blood. So let's just assume for a minute that, yes, indeed, Jesus just passed out, right? He went into a coma and he was just sleeping in the tomb. And then 3 days later, the disciples came and stole his body, whatever. Well, this is where I want to get to Scripture. Luke chapter 24 tells us about the road to Emmaus. It said that same day of his resurrection, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, which is about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking to each other, and Jesus came up and walked with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. Okay, and so Jesus began to enter this conversation, and he said, "What are you guys talking about?" And they're talking about this Jesus of Nazareth fellow. We thought that he was going to be the ruler. He was a prophet. He was going to be powerful and lead us. And then Jesus said, "How foolish are you, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken? Did not the Christ have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And then he began from the very beginning of the teachings of Moses throughout the Old Testament, showing how they point to Jesus Christ being the Messiah. Okay, and so they have this conversation, and as they left, they were like, "Man, stay with us, for it's nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in with them. Then their eyes were open and they recognized that it was Jesus. And then he disappeared. And they asked each other in verse 32, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened scriptures with us?" I love that. And I love this whole passage in Luke 24, because here's the thing. Say Jesus didn't die and he swooned. He was just passed out. But he still went through all of that stuff. And then 3 days later, with some say no food, maybe the disciples or whomever, if we're going through that conspiracy theory that the disciples, fed him and they stole his body. Let's just say this. He had very little food, but he had all that lost blood. Do you think that dude could have walked 7 miles? 3 days after being to the point of death, he walked 7 miles. Some of us, we can't walk 7 miles today. Right? And Jesus supposedly walked 7 miles. Listen, that swoon theory is not acceptable at all. It's no way on the face of this planet that Jesus just merely passed out and then he survived this, okay? There's no way possible. So as you discuss this amongst yourself, you discuss it with your Sunday school, talk about these theories, embrace these theories, because I believe that Scripture backs up and proves that it is true. All right? The best interpretation for Scripture is Scripture. So dig into the Word and study it. But that's what I wanted to talk about today on Wednesday in the Word, is this idea of a swoon theory. All right? If you've never heard of it, you've heard of it before. And I hope that this message, these words, encouraged you and deepened your thinking and understanding of that. Okay? Thank you so much. God bless you. I hope you join us Friday night for our trivia at 6:30. And until we get to meet again, we love you, and keep tuning in virtually.